WADR. Promoting dialogue. It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and 7 o'clock in Abuja. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Participants at WADR's webinar call on African leaders to adopt transformative policies on utilizing the continent's natural resources amid Donald Trump's aid cut on Africa.
Now look inward and look for the growth and developing up our resources to other people to come and amass from outside to come and do it.
This current moment also presents an opportunity, and it's a wake-up call for Africa to rethink its approach to financing development.
Governments on the continent can cut down on corruption by even 70%. We can generate enough revenue.
Protest intensifies in Benin following the death of a trader by a security operative. Reactions trailed the achievement of Senegal's first-born marrow transplant.
It really means a lot to us when we know that we are going to be the first country in French-speaking Black Africa to have a bone marrow transplant.
And Nigeria's President Tinubu declares a 6-month state of emergency in Rivers State following power tussle crisis. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Colley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Newslink begins with experts urging African leaders to adopt homegrown policies and focus on utilizing the continent's natural resources for their own social and economic development, stability, and growth. These calls come in response to the decision by U.S. President Donald Trump's administration to cut U.S. aid to African countries. A group of experts discussed the situation during a virtual panel organized by West Africa Democracy Radio on today, Wednesday. The webinar, titled "The Trump Administration's Executive Order Freezing International Aid: What Impact and Lessons for Africa," aimed to promote African sovereignty while highlighting the potential effects of the funding cuts on key sectors like health, education, and budgetary support across the continent. Christopher, our teacher, reports.
Assuming office for a second term on January 20, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump has signed 86 executive orders aimed at making America great again. Among the reforms is the freezing of funding from U.S. aid to Africa. This decision has led to the termination of the $520 million US Prosper Africa program, designated to foster trade between the U.S. and Africa, while also affecting the budget support of many African countries in health, education, agriculture, and infrastructure. While others lament about the challenges, panelists on WADR's webinar called on African leaders to adopt homegrown policies and prudently use natural resources for their development. International relations expert Dr. Michael Nketia urged African leaders to curb corruption to save resources.
Governments on the continent can cut down on corruption by even 70%. We can generate enough revenue that far exceeds the deficits that are likely to be occasioned by the withdrawal of U.S. aid to the African continent.
On her part, the head of the Francophone Project for Wadr, Marie-José Enga, said the new development presents an opportunity to rethink a different approach to the continent's finances and development.
This current moment also presents an opportunity, and it's a wake-up call for Africa to rethink its approach to financing development and governance. Because when civil society or governments cannot operate because of lack of funding, the citizens will start thinking that, so there is no continuity in the different actions that they have been benefiting from.
Meanwhile, the Executive Director for Equal Access International, Dr. Maggie Peters, highlighted the critical need to take administrative control of the continent's extractive sector.
than look inward and look for the growth and developing up our resources to other people to come and amass from outside to come and do it. Most of the multinationals who come to do petroleum explorations were foreign. The Shells, the Texacos, and all of them, the Mobil, they are all not indigenous companies. But today we have an indigenous refinery which is the largest in West Africa.
Participants of the webinar also shared varied views despite the freeze in aid.
We've been calling for a lot of detachment and freedom for a long time. And now that it's here, everyone is panicking. I thought, as a continent, we would be ready for what we were asking for, right?
This will give Africa an opportunity to reevaluate itself and reposition itself in terms of its engagement with regards to its development partners.
From the fund freeze, Africa finds itself with a $20 billion shortfall this year, as American aid is deployed in 150 countries around the world, with 6 African countries among the top 10 recipients.
Christopher Atijofied that report. To other stories, reactions are trailing Senegal's recent achievement in the medical field with the successful completion of its first bone marrow transplant. This feat was accomplished by the team at Dalajam Hospital in Guédiawaye, a suburb of Dakar, under the leadership of Professor Fatou Samba Ndiaye. The producer performed on a Senegalese patient with a blood disorder involved an autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplant, also called the autograft. The team at WADR paid the hospital a visit, and here are the findings.
The operation was performed at the bone marrow transplant and circular therapy unit of the Jalal Jam Hospital in Guédiawaye, a suburb of Dakar. The patient is a 52-year-old Senegalese who lives in Rufisque, a town south of the capital, Dakar. Professor Fatou Samba Ndiaye, an hematologist, is the head of the team that piloted the operation.
It really means a lot to us when we know that we are going to be the first country in French-speaking Black Africa to have a bone marrow transplant, because it was achieved by an all-Senegalese team who put their heart and soul into the creation of this jewel of a marrow transplant and cell therapy center right here in the suburbs of Dakar, in a public hospital.
Hospitalized since last year, the patient, who wouldn't want to be named, was operated on February 23. Today he is in good health and has joined his family. The patient says, I have to take injections at home, but as I was a bit stressed, I was a bit scared, so I thought I'll better do it here. In case of a crisis like mine, it's here. I preferred to do it here. That's why it took a little while. I did 7 days here, Monday to Sunday. After Monday, we went into this building where we're going to do the marrow transplant.
Nice to meet you.
Professor Fatou Samba Ndiaye, who led the team, described the operation as painstaking, however, ending on a good note. It is important to note this bone marrow transplant is the first in Senegal and French-speaking West Africa. Senegal, which is thus becoming the reference, is also equipping itself with an efficient medical platform, according to Professor Fatou Samba Ndiaye.
We can transplant 4 patients at the same time because the technology needed to transplant a patient is available in this bone marrow transplant building, where the top floor has laminar flow rooms equipped with continuous air renewal technology to maximize asepsis during hospitalization. Because you know very well that when we hospitalize this kind of patients with the water chemotherapy we give them, they have practically no defense left. That's why it's vital to put them in this kind of atmosphere so that they don't shock infections or germs. That's also why it was important to have all types of antibiotics on hand in case the patients developed an infection, whether bacterial, viral, parasitic, or H1B.
It is worthy to note that this first operation cost a total of 7 million CFA francs, entirely covered by the hospital.
Imo edified that report. Meanwhile, the Senegalese Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency, ARP, in collaboration with the National Brigade for the Fight Against Piracy and Counterfeiting, dismantled 8 illegal warehouses and seized a significant quantity of prohibited medications. They include painkillers, anti-inflammatories, and products containing antibiotic steroids in syrup form. This seizure was part of a control operation carried out on Tuesday in the Grand Yoff near the Dakar suburbs as part of the fight against drug trafficking and counterfeiting. According to a press statement, 8 individuals were arrested and taken into custody for investigation. The trafficking of counterfeit medicines has reached alarming proportions in Senegal, with numerous seizures regularly made by the law enforcement agency. In 2021, the Customs Administration announced that the value of counterfeit medicines seized between 2019 and 2021 amounted to nearly 3 billion CFA francs.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now, elsewhere, Ghana and Sierra Leone are set to deepen their bilateral cooperation following a high-level meeting between Presidents John Dramani Mahama and Julius Maada Bio in Freetown. The discussions resulted in key agreements, including the revitalization of a general cooperation agreement and the swift establishment of a permanent joint cooperation commission to strengthen ties in trade, security, and development. WADR's Nadia Tete reports.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has reaffirmed his commitment to strengthening bilateral relations with Sierra Leone following high-level talks with President Julius Maada Bio in Freetown. This marks Mr. Mahama's first visit to Sierra Leone since assuming office in January. During a joint press briefing, President Bio congratulated his Ghanaian counterpart and acknowledged the strong fraternal ties between their two nations. President Mahama emphasized the importance of institutionalizing cooperation through the Permanent Joint Cooperation Commission, which both leaders agreed to establish as soon as possible.
I think that President Maada Bio's report is very comprehensive. Indeed, we have discussed a broad range of issues, and one of the most important points we agreed on was to establish the Permanent Joint Commission for Cooperation as quickly as possible so that it becomes the institutional framework for us to build our cooperation on. There are many areas in which we can work together.
The two leaders explored avenues for collaboration in trade, investment, agriculture, and education, with President Bio outlining their shared commitment to strengthening economic ties. Regional security was also a major focus, as both leaders addressed growing threats such as terrorism and instability in the Sahel.
We affirmed our commitment, cooperating and coordinating efforts to address these challenges confronting the regional and the consequences on peace, stability, and prosperity.
The issue of terrorism and the issue of the current alliance of Sahelian states and ECOWAS, and we compared notes because he had previously visited the 3 countries and I had just recently visited, so we compared notes.
The two presidents also discussed Africa's push for United Nations Security Council reforms, with President Bio reiterating Sierra Leone's commitment to advancing the continent's common position. For WADR, Nadia Tete, Accra.
In Cote d'Ivoire, PPACR, the party of former President Laurent Gbagbo, has reacted to the publication of the electoral roll. Convicted in the Bissau robbery case during the 2010-2011 post-electoral crisis, the party's leader is not on the electoral list. His supporters are calling for mobilization and alleged plot to remove him from next October's presidential election. Sebastian JJ is executive president of the PPACR.
The Independent Electoral Commission has published the provisional electoral list for the 2025 elections. We would like to express our deep disappointment and concern about the credibility of the process that has been put in place. This raises the problem of the reliability of the electoral list, in addition to the multiple and multiform frauds that we denounce every day. There is nothing independent about the IEC, despite all the talk. For us today, the only important thing is President Laurent Gbagbo's effective candidacy for the 2025 presidential election, that he will win. we insist with our militants that the battle to register Laurent Gbagbo on the electoral roll is a moral duty for us. And as such, our comrades, our militants, must continue to fight. The PPP-SI unreservedly condemns the IC's actions, which constitute exclusion and provocation against a large part of the Ivorian population. The PPSI invites its military sympathizers to follow the instructions of the party leadership in the context of the electoral dispute and to be ready for future wars of order.
Sebastien Djidji is executive president of the PPACR in Cote d'Ivoire. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Participants at WADR's webinar call on African leaders to adopt transformative policies on utilizing the continent's natural resources amid Donald Trump's aid cut on Africa. Reactions trail the achievement of Senegal's first bone marrow transplant. Nigeria's President Tinubu declares a 6-month state of emergency in Rivers State following power tussle crisis. Still ahead in the news, a protest intensifies in Benin following the death of a trader by a security operative. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for staying with us. Let's take you to Benin, where the death of a shopkeeper led to clashes between residents and law enforcement officers in the town of Buka in Kalala in the north of the country. The trader was allegedly killed by a police officer. These clashes caused significant material damages. Abdullahi Hassan has the details.
According to a local authority in Buka, who spoke to WADR's correspondent on their condition of anonymity, it was a police officer who shot the trader. The incident began with an altercation between a cashew nut seller and law enforcement officers. This tragedy has sparked widespread outrage among the local population. Protests erupted in Buka, during which demonstrators targeted infrastructure belonging to law enforcement agencies. Eyewitnesses reported that protesters set fire to 2 police motorcycles and a patrol vehicle. They also vandalized the homes of both the district chief and the village head. The atmosphere in the municipality of Kalili remains tense, but local authorities said they are working to calm the protesters. Meanwhile, the community is demanding explanations and concrete measures to clarify the circumstances surrounding this tragedy.
Abdullahi Hassan with the details of Aziz Adam Sulet's report from Cotonou. The government of Niger has announced a series of measures to tighten its oil cooperation with China National Petroleum Corporation, citing the corporation's failure to implement local content reforms and demanding a greater national presence in the sector. Following a Council of Ministers meeting on March 18, the authorities criticized the CNPC for ploy, a misleading assessment of contractual agreements, and lack of genuine will to comply with national legislations. Francis Boniface reports.
The Nigerian government, under the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Fatherland (CNSP), aims to enforce several measures, including equalizing pay between expatriates and Nigerian employees, prioritizing Nigerian workers in oil operations, ensuring local companies are awarded subcontracts, modifying certain agreements to better serve Nigerian interests, and aligning the Niger-Benin pipeline transport agreement with crude oil transport contracts. Additional measures include demanding transparency regarding financial commitments for the Niger-Benin pipeline, amending the Articles of Association for West African Petroleum Operations (WAPO) to allow Nigerian participation in its capital, and appointing Nigerian representatives to strategic positions within CNSP with equal rights and benefits. These decisions are rooted in Ordinance No. 2024-34 of August 2024, which mandates priority employment of Nigerian labor, the use of local goods and services, and technology transfer to maximize national economic benefits. The announcement comes shortly after the Nigerian authorities revoked the operating licenses of Solux International Hotel in Niamey, a Chinese-built property, due to serious violations. This reassessment of the oil partnerships reflects a broader shift in Niger's relations with China, which remains a key investor following the nation's break with Western partners after the July 2023 coup.
Francis Boniface with that report. Elsewhere in Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu Tuesday, during a televised broadcast, declared a state of emergency in Rivers State following an unending political crisis. The 6-month security measure, according to Tinubu, is in accordance with Section 305 of the 1999 Constitution and temporarily suspends the state governor Fubara, his deputy, and all members of the House of Assembly during the period. For several months now, the suspended state governor Fubara and the former political mentor Nyesom Wike have fought over the control of the political structure in the oil-rich state. However, tensions escalated Tuesday when unknown armed men attacked an oil pipeline in the state. Our development President Tinubu condemns those warranting the declaration.
I feel greatly disturbed at the tone we have come to regarding the political crisis in Rivers State. With the crisis persisting, there's no way democratic governance, which we all fought and worked for over the years, can thrive in a way that will redound to the benefit of the good people of the state. I have made personal interventions between the contending parties for a peaceful resolution of this crisis, but my efforts have been largely ignored by the parties to the crisis, with the best of intentions to resolve the matter, but all their efforts were also to no avail. The latest security report made available to me show that between yesterday and today, there have been disturbing incidents of vandalization of pipelines by some militants without governor taking any action to curtail them. I have, of course, given stand order to the security agencies to ensure safety of lives of good people of Rivers State and the oil pipelines. With all this and many more, it has become inevitably compelling for me to invoke the provision of the Section 305 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, to declare a state of emergency in Rivers State with effect from 18th March, year 2025.
Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The Liberian government has welcomed 2 senior experts from the Forensic Technologies International Consortium based in the UK. Andrew Durant and Wayne Anthony will assist the Assets Recovery and Property Retrieval Task Force in tracing and recovering assets acquired through illicit means. Their mission focuses on investigating misappropriated public funds and illegally acquired properties, aiming to enhance Liberia's capacity to track down stolen assets effectively.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
Our guest is a Nigerian constitutional lawyer, Barrister Fred Nziko. Barrister Fred joins us with an in-depth analysis of the state of emergency declared in Rivers State by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
There's one more step that needs to be passed because by the provision of the Constitution, for a state of emergency to be activated, subsection 2A of Section 305 of our Constitution requires that the National Assembly will have to give it its concurrence. That means the National Assembly, sitting in a two-thirds majority of both houses of representatives and Senate, will have to concur before it is activated. If they fail to concur, then the declaration will not be effective. And they have 2 days when they are sitting in plenary to do so, or 10 days if they are on break. Now they are sitting in plenary, so we expect that by today, the matter will be discussed at the National Assembly, latest by tomorrow, if not today. Then, if it is assented to by the Assembly, the implication is that for the next 6 months, the governor and all his appointees, that is the commissioners and the rest, would have to step down. The House of Assembly will be closed down. Both the executive and legislative arms of government will cease to function because a sole administrator will take over their duties and their functions.
So does this mean like a military takeover?
It is like a military takeover, and even the sole administrator is a retired Vice Marshal of the Navy, Vice Admiral, who was one time a Chief of Naval Staff. So it's purely like a military takeover, and he acts as a sole administrator. And they where he needed to make bylaws, he has asked not to make any law, but if there is need to make any particular bylaw to advance the course of his administration for these first 6 months, he will need to present it before the National Assembly for consideration.
Barrister Fred, at what point did the governor of the state fail to handle this matter?
Although the address by Mr. President squarely blamed the governor and made no reference to the imbroglio, the political imbroglio in Rivers State, which involved the governor on one side and the FCT minister, the former governor, on the other side. But the federal government decided to close one eye that is supposed to look at Wike and open the other eye and looked at Steve Fubara and heaped the whole blame on him that he failed to take some necessary steps. But so many people believe that it was politics that has gone too far, that there's an admixture of politics with security and economics in this matter, because the president also cited the fact that there was a bomb blast on one of the major oil pipelines, which of course is a major threat to our economic stability and is viewed as economic sabotage that needs to be arrested urgently. Now, Mr. President has used the state of emergency as his own version of the solution, which of course again many people are arguing that that is not the solution, that is even pouring petrol into a raging fire. The issue of the state of emergency will not bring the required solution, but whether it will or will not, only time will tell.
That was Barrister Fred in Zuko. Here comes Sankule Janko with the latest in the world of sports. Good evening, Sankule.
Yes, good evening, Augustine. Of course, let's go straight with the latest sports stories. Bringing you up, let's go with the qualifier rounds this evening. And Liberia were defeated 1-0 in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Tunisia at the Samuel Koendo Stadium this evening. As a Masturi's solo goal in the 40th minute was enough to earn the Tunisians all the 3 points. The results still keep Liberia in third place behind Tunisia and Namibia first and second respectively. Elsewhere, Cameroon were held to a goalless draw against lowly Eswatini as the game wraps up moments ago. This result means Cameroon still maintain their top spot ahead of Libya in second. Meanwhile, Madagascar have thrashed the Central African Republic 4-1 to solidify their World Cup dreams. Madagascar tops the group following the victory ahead of Comoros and Ghana, who both play on Thursday and Friday. There are more exciting fixtures to look forward to in the qualifiers on Thursday. The fixtures in the 2025 World Cup qualifiers in Africa are as follows for Thursday. Mozambique will take on Uganda. Malawi will entertain Namibia. Zimbabwe will welcome Benin. Cape Verde will take on Mauritius. Sierra Leone will entertain Guinea-Bissau in an all-West African derby. Gabon will welcome Seychelles. Gambia will take on Kenya. Libya will entertain Angola. Zimbabwe versus Benin, and Mali will entertain Comoros. That's it for sports. Augustine.
Quickly, Sankule, is there a reason why you began with Liberia, my country, as a first story?
Oh no, come on. It was the first. It was a game that I was really, really, really keenly following. I'm sorry that you lost, but it was nothing specific. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the game. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maudo Diouf and Umundanyogo for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Kali. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to